The village buzzed with gossip long before the wedding bells rang. Everyone knew her Lila, the beautiful, spirited young woman whose grace and charm made her the envy of the town. She moved with confidence, dressed in fine fabrics, and had friends who whispered about her prospects. Everyone assumed she would marry well, someone of means, someone who could match her social standing. But Lila had a different kind of vision for her life. She was drawn not to wealth or status, but to character, honesty, and the quiet strength she saw in a man others dismissed as simple. His name was Caleb, a mountain man who lived at the edge of the village in a small, modest cabin nestled in the hills. To the villagers, Caleb was unremarkable, unpolished, taciturn, and unschooled in the manners of the town. He wore worn clothes, spoke in plain sentences, and lived a life of work and solitude, tending to his animals, chopping wood, and cultivating a small garden. In the eyes of the town, he could never be worthy of Lila, whose family prided themselves on appearances and social connections. They laughed behind their hands, predicting that the marriage would be a mistake, a fleeting rebellion that would soon lead to regret. But Lila saw something different in Caleb. While others noticed only his rough exterior, she saw reliability, patience, and a depth of integrity that could not be measured in silver or gold. She admired the way he cared for the land, the animals, and the few neighbors he aided quietly and without expectation. His humor was dry but genuine. His smile, rare but sincere, carried warmth. More than that, he respected her opinions, valued her thoughts, and treated her as an equal, something no wealthy suitor had ever done. The engagement was met with shock and scorn. Friends whispered about her poor taste, and the family fretted over the marital misstep. On market days, women would comment on the mismatch, and men would smirk as they saw Caleb walk beside her. Even her closest friends struggled to understand, asking why she would marry someone without connections, without wealth, without influence. Lila simply smiled and shook her head, for she understood something they did not. Love was not about appearances. It was about trust, respect, and the quiet comfort of knowing someone would stand beside you, through hardship and joy alike. Preparations for the wedding were humble, reflecting Caleb's way of life. There was no lavish feast, no elaborate decorations, only a modest gathering of a few relatives, neighbors, and curious villagers. Lila's gown, though beautiful, was simple, handmade from fine cloth but without frills. Caleb, true to himself, wore his best shirt and trousers, still showing signs of the work he did each day. To outsiders, it was an unusual scene. A beautiful bride paired with a man of simple means. Yet, for those who looked closely, there was a quiet dignity in the ceremony, a profound authenticity that wealth and social standing could never manufacture. As they exchanged vows, the whispers of mockery continued, but Lila and Caleb felt only the solemn weight of their promises. For them, the world outside, the judgment, the ridicule, the laughter mattered little. What mattered was the bond they had formed, built on honesty, respect, and the unspoken knowledge that together they could face whatever life might throw at them. The villagers laughed, certainly, but Lila and Caleb were already embarking on a journey that would challenge assumptions, redefine wealth, and reveal that true value lies not in what the eye sees, but in what the heart understands. From this unlikely match, the story begins not with grandeur or spectacle, but with courage, conviction, and the first steps of a love that would quietly transform not just their lives, but the very village that doubted them. After the wedding, Lila left behind the bustling village and stepped into a world entirely different from the one she had known. The road to Caleb's mountain home was long and winding, framed by dense forests, rocky paths, and the distant outline of rolling hills. Each step carried her further from the comforts of town, the well-trodden streets. the market stalls, and the familiar laughter of friends, and closer to a life defined by simplicity, work, and isolation. Caleb's cabin was modest, constructed from hand-hewn logs with a small stone chimney and a porch overlooking the valley below. The interior was warm but unadorned, with a fireplace that served as both heater and kitchen, wooden shelves lined with practical tools, and simple furniture crafted from the surrounding forest. It was far from the elegance and luxury that Lila had grown up around, yet there was a quiet charm in its honesty. The home was a reflection of Caleb himself, functional, unpretentious, and built with care. Adjusting to this new life proved challenging. Each day demanded physical labor she had never known, drawing water from the well, tending to chickens and goats, gathering firewood, and preparing meals on a wood-burning stove. Her hands, once delicate and unaccustomed to toil, grew calloused from daily tasks. Her body ached in ways she had never experienced, and there were moments when she longed for the comfort of her old life, when the ease of town seemed almost like a dream. Yet, amid the hardships, Lila began to notice a deeper rhythm to life in the mountains. Mornings began with the sun rising over misty peaks, filling the cabin with golden light. The air was fresh and scented with pine and earth, and the sounds of nature birdsong, rustling leaves, and distant flowing streams replaced the clamor of streets and markets. In this quiet, she found space to reflect, to breathe, and to feel a profound connection to the land and to Caleb. Caleb himself was a patient teacher. He never rushed her, never criticized her mistakes. Instead, he showed her how to milk the goats, start the fire, and tend the garden. He worked alongside her, guiding her hands when necessary and offering gentle encouragement when tasks seemed overwhelming. Though his words were few, his actions communicated respect and partnership. Every task became a lesson, and with each passing day, Lila gained confidence and competence she had never imagined possible. The couple's life, though simple, was filled with moments of intimacy and connection. Evenings were spent together by the fireplace, sharing stories of the day, planning the next, or simply enjoying the silence. Caleb's quiet presence was comforting. His steady, thoughtful demeanor gave her a sense of safety and belonging she had never known in the village. She began to understand that love was not in grand gestures or material wealth, but in the shared work, trust, and the unspoken bond that grew stronger with each day. Despite her growing contentment, the village continued to whisper. Letters and visitors carried rumors of her supposed folly, reminding her that others saw her as a woman who had traded opportunity for simplicity. But with Caleb, these judgments seemed inconsequential. She discovered that true strength lay not in wealth or approval, but in the courage to live authentically, guided by one's own convictions. Over time, Lila's heart shifted from longing for her old life to embracing the rhythms of the mountains. Each challenge she overcame strengthened her. Each shared moment with Caleb deepened their bond. The hardships that once seemed unbearable became part of a new understanding. That love, trust, and resilience could create a life richer than any treasure the town could offer. In this remote, rugged world, Lila learned that simplicity was not poverty, but the foundation for a deeper, more enduring happiness. By the end of her first season in the mountains, Lila had transformed. She was no longer the delicate, sheltered girl from the village. She was a capable, resilient woman who had discovered that true wealth was measured not in gold, but in love, partnership, and the courage to embrace a life lived fully, far from the judgment of others. Life in the mountains settled into a steady rhythm. Lila and Caleb worked side by side from dawn to dusk. Their days marked by chores, tending animals, gardening, and maintaining the cabin. The simplicity of their life contrasted sharply with the town's bustle and its preoccupation with status, wealth, and appearances here. There were no idle judgments or whispers, only the land, the tasks it demanded, and the quiet presence of each other, Lila began to feel a peace she had never known. A profound satisfaction in honest labor and the intimacy of shared responsibility. Yet even as she embraced this new life, subtle hints of mystery began to surface. Caleb, despite his humble demeanor, exhibited a surprising competence in areas she had not expected. He repaired furniture with intricate skill, creating joints and carvings that seemed far beyond what a simple mountain man would know. He understood the workings of tools and mechanisms she had only read about, and he managed resources with foresight that hinted at experience and knowledge hidden from outsiders. Lila noticed the precision in everything he did, from the careful organization of his small store of supplies to the efficient routines he followed each morning. These clues sparked curiosity in her mind. Caleb never boasted, never drew attention to his skills, yet his capabilities suggested a depth that belied his modest exterior. Lila began to realize that the man she had married was not what the villagers believed. There was a hidden complexity, a quiet intelligence, and a methodical approach to life that gave him control over circumstances that might overwhelm others. She found herself both fascinated and comforted, understanding that his strength was not showy, but deeply reliable. Meanwhile, the village's mockery continued at a distance. Travelers occasionally passed through, bringing back stories of Lila's supposed hardship. They expected tales of regret or hardship, of a woman overwhelmed by her choice, but Lila's face and demeanor betrayed none of that. Though she had faced the challenges of mountain life, she had grown stronger, more capable, and more content, yet she kept the truth private. There was no need to prove anything to those who had doubted her. The mountains themselves had become their own sanctuary, shielding them from gossip and judgment. Amid this calm, small incidents hinted at the layers of Caleb's life, rare tools of fine craftsmanship, carefully kept ledgers, and subtle signs of refinement in his cabin drew Lila's attention. He spoke sparingly of the town, of finances, or of past ventures, but when he did, it was clear he understood far more than he let on. The contrast between his unassuming life and the competence hidden beneath it created a tension that intrigued Lila. It was as if he were intentionally modest, allowing appearances to mask his true abilities. She began to reflect on the lessons this quiet life was teaching her. True wealth, she realized, was not always visible. A person's value could not be measured by outward appearances alone. Patience, intelligence, and skill could remain invisible to casual observers, yet they were powerful and enduring. Caleb's calm, measured life demonstrated that dignity, foresight, and quiet action often mattered more than flashy displays or social recognition. As the months passed, Lila's admiration deepened. She learned to trust not only Caleb's skills but also his judgment, his quiet decision-making, and his unwavering moral compass. There was an unspoken security in knowing that, however simple he appeared to others, he could navigate any challenge with intelligence and care. Life continued in the mountains with its steady rhythm. But a subtle shift began to ripple through Caleb and Lila's world. Their days were still filled with chores, tending the animals and maintaining the cabin. Yet an unexpected event began to challenge the quiet of their secluded life. One morning, a group of outsiders arrived, surveyors sent to examine the land, distant relatives seeking inheritance, or officials checking records and property boundaries. They carried an air of authority and curiosity, expecting to find a humble, simple man and perhaps a wife overwhelmed by isolation. What they found instead was far from their expectations. Caleb received them calmly. Without arrogance or defensiveness, his movements were measured, his words deliberate. He greeted them with quiet confidence, showing neither fear nor pretense. Lila, standing nearby, watched as he navigated their questions with ease. He answered inquiries about the land, the animals, and his resources with a precision and understanding that left the visitors momentarily stunned. the skills and knowledge he had applied silently in daily life, managing supplies, maintaining structures, and planning for seasonal changes, now revealed themselves as evidence of remarkable competence and foresight. The outsiders began to notice other details. Subtle but telling. Inside the cabin, they saw tools of exceptional quality, meticulously maintained and sometimes rare fine craftsmanship, marked furniture and storage chests, with carvings and joinery that spoke of skill well beyond the ordinary. Ledgers and records, carefully organized, hinted at financial acumen and knowledge of investments or property holdings. Each discovery challenged the assumption that Caleb was merely a simple mountain man, quietly exposing layers of his life that had gone unseen by the village. Lila felt a mix of pride and astonishment. She had known there was depth to Caleb, but watching outsiders react to his abilities gave her a new appreciation for the previous and for the man she had married. The quiet strength she had relied on became undeniable in the face of scrutiny. Her respect and admiration for him deepened, not because of the potential wealth revealed, but because of his integrity, humility, and the deliberate way he had lived his life. Every skill and piece of knowledge had been used for the benefit of their home, not for show or approval. The visitors, initially dismissive and curious, began to change their tone. What they had expected to be a simple encounter became a lesson in humility. Caleb's calm authority and undisputed competence left a lasting impression. They realized that the man the town had mocked, labeled simple, unambitious, or uneducated, possessed rare intelligence, foresight, and capability. Even without revealing the full scope of his resources, the glimpse into his life forced the outsiders to reevaluate their assumptions. This revelation also created tension and suspense. The story hinted that there was even more to Caleb than could be seen in these initial encounters. Lila sensed it: the quiet confidence, the understated skill, and the subtle hints in his possessions and knowledge suggested that a hidden fortune or untapped wealth lay beneath the surface. The moment set the stage for a dramatic revelation that would redefine how the village and even Lila herself understood Caleb. As the outsiders departed, murmuring with surprise and newfound respect, the mountains returned to their quiet rhythm. Yet the encounter had changed everything. The illusion of simplicity, carefully maintained for humility and practicality, had begun to unravel. Lila understood that Caleb's life was richer than anyone could have imagined, not just in material terms, but in wisdom, character, and foresight. The first pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, preparing for the full revelation of a fortune hidden in plain sight. The true magnitude of Caleb's life began to emerge gradually. Though Lila had already glimpsed hints of it through the months they had spent together, the arrival of the outsiders, the surveyors, relatives, and officials had been just the first step. In the days that followed, Caleb revealed, quietly and deliberately, the full extent of what he had kept hidden from the world. The mountain man everyone had dismissed as simple was, in fact, the heir to a substantial fortune, lands, investments, and treasures amassed or inherited over generations. Yet what made this revelation remarkable was not just the wealth itself, but the humility and discretion with which he had lived. The fortune was not ostentatious. There were no gold-plated furnishings or flamboyant displays. Instead, it was reflected in the meticulous care of his property, the rare tools and heirlooms he had preserved, and the strategic management of his holdings. Lila began to understand that every action he had taken, the efficiency of his routines, the precision in his repairs, the careful planning of the household and land, was rooted in a depth of knowledge few could match. Each day in the mountains had been shaped by foresight, skill, and the wisdom of someone who had lived beyond appearances. As Caleb explained his past, The story of his life unfolded like a hidden map. He had inherited wealth, but chose a life of simplicity. Preferring the peace of the mountains to the chaos of the town, his fortune had been managed quietly. Invested wisely and kept away from public knowledge, it was never meant to impress anyone. It was meant to sustain a life grounded in values, responsibility, and practicality. Lila listened with awe, realizing that the man she had married possessed a rare combination: humility alongside extraordinary capability, modesty alongside hidden power. The villagers' perception of Caleb and Lila was transformed almost overnight. Word spread of the fortune, and those who had laughed and mocked now whispered in astonishment. The woman they had ridiculed for marrying a poor, simple man now stood with him as an equal partner in a life far richer than anyone had imagined yet. The couple's priorities had not changed. They continued their daily routines, tending the land, caring for animals, and nurturing their home. The fortune enhanced their security and comfort, but it did not alter the love, respect, and simplicity that had drawn them together. This revelation also deepened the bond between Lila and Caleb. She realized that the qualities she admired most, integrity, patience, and quiet intelligence, had been intertwined with his wealth all along. Though he never flaunted it, the fortune had not created their connection. It had been an unseen layer beneath the life they were already building together. Lila's respect for him grew as she saw how effortlessly he balanced practicality with generosity, ensuring that the wealth served a meaningful purpose rather than vanity or status. The story emphasizes the contrast between appearance and reality. Caleb's modest exterior had concealed extraordinary resources, and the village's assumptions about wealth, simplicity, and value were exposed as shallow and misleading. The narrative demonstrates that true fortune is not only material. It is also the wisdom, foresight, and character that guide how that wealth is used. Caleb's discretion and humility reinforce the idea that greatness does not need to be broadcast. It can exist quietly, profoundly, and impactfully. With the revelation of Caleb's hidden fortune, life shifted dramatically. Yet Lila and Caleb's foundation remained unshaken. The wealth that had been concealed for so long now provided comfort, stability, and opportunities that the village had never imagined yet. For the couple, it was never about luxury or ostentation. It was about security, empowerment, and the freedom to continue living according to their values. Their life in the mountains, once quiet and modest, had transformed into a symbol of integrity, humility, and the power of unseen strength. The villagers who had once scoffed at the marriage now looked upon Lila and Caleb with astonishment. Gossip gave way to admiration, and derision slowly transformed into respect. People realized that their judgments had been shallow and premature. They had measured worth by appearances rather than character. Those who had laughed at the young woman for marrying a simple man now understood that true fortune cannot always be seen, and that wisdom, humility, and foresight often outshine wealth displayed openly. The couple's story became a lesson for the community, a reminder that appearances are not the measure of value, and that integrity and patience often carry their own hidden rewards. For Lila, vindication was sweet but understated. She did not revel in the villagers' shock. Instead, she found satisfaction in the quiet knowledge that she had trusted her instincts and chosen a partner for his heart and mind rather than his status. Every hardship she had endured in adapting to mountain life had strengthened her, teaching her resilience, resourcefulness, and the meaning of true companionship. In Caleb, she had discovered a partner whose love was unwavering, whose judgment was sound, and whose character remained noble even after the world's perception shifted. Wealth had never defined their relationship. It had only amplified the life they were already building together. Caleb, for his part, remained true to himself. Though now recognized as a wealthy and influential figure, he continued to live modestly, working alongside Lila in the home and fields. Maintaining the routines that had grounded him for so long, he understood that fortune alone did not make a life meaningful. It was the integrity, care, and effort poured into daily existence that gave life value. His quiet generosity, whether in mentoring the villagers, aiding neighbors, or ensuring his resources were used wisely, became a defining trait, proving that wealth wielded with humility and responsibility could strengthen both family and community. The couple's life flourished not only materially but emotionally and spiritually. Lila and Caleb grew more attuned to one another, deepening their bond through shared work, laughter, and quiet reflection. The once isolated mountains became a haven of love, stability, and purpose, a place where they could cultivate not just crops or property, but also character and trust. The children of the village, and even the adults, looked to them as examples of perseverance, judgment, and the rewards of quiet, steadfast virtue. Ultimately, the story emphasizes the enduring power of choice, integrity, and discernment. Layla's decision to marry for character rather than status, Caleb's choice to live humbly despite inheritance, and their mutual dedication to values over appearances culminated in a life richer than gold. The village witnessed a transformation, not only in the couple's fortune but in the way they understood human worth, the importance of humility, and the lesson that true richness lies in love, wisdom, and trust.